Hey everyone, it's Tara Lynn. Welcome to Copper Patina Advanced Artistry. This is what we're making this evening. So you will want to start by having your background color painted. I'm using black, but you can use any color that appeals to you. And I've got my step-by-step directions right by my side here. I think those are a nice way to follow along as you're painting. And that way you can work at your own pace. If you're watching on the recording, remember you can always pause, rewind, and go back to the beginning. Let me pin myself here. I've got my paint out. It's the same colors that we used in the box. I've got light blue, aqua, and teal, and then our Venetian gold and our pearl peach. Those are the colors that we're using today. And let me just make sure I'm recording and everything's good to go. All right, so we are going to start off with our center dot. You'll see after you paint this, the lines will be a little more hidden, but you should still be able to see where the lines are. And that makes starting the dot much, much easier. I'm going to use the pink 10mm tool for my center, and I'm using Pearl Peach. Remember, when you're doing your dots, you want your paint to go up over the edge of your tool, and you want to hold it straight up and down and gently kiss the canvas, or kiss the piece. Sometimes with these larger dots, I like to just give a little extra paint so that it's nice and thick there. And then I'm going to get my green dotting tool, and I'm going to use the small end, the 2.5mm end. And we are going to use the teal paint. And we're going to do dots at north, south, east, and west to get our centers. And I am doing this, I'll lift this up to the camera. There is a circle that goes around that center dot. That's where I'm putting these dots, inside that carved circle there. And so I'm going to start off with my main 4. Make sure when you make these small dots, it's dip and dot each time so that they're all the same size. Once I have my north, south, east, and west, I'm going to go halfway between those dots. Kind of cut that space in half. And that's going to give me 8. And then there should be space for 1 dot in between each of those. So we will end up with 16 when it's all said and done. I've got one right here that I'm not real crazy about, and I'm going to regret trying to fix it, but I'm going to try anyway. I feel like sometimes it's those little things that nobody else is going to notice that drive us crazy that are our downfall. The next part of the design, step 2 on the step-by-step guide, is one of my favorite elements to add. And we're going to go around this center circle with swipes out and then swipes in. And I think that makes a really pretty effect. I like to do that a lot. I'm going to continue using the same tool. It's my green tool on the small end. And I am going to start out with the light blue paint. And in this circle, you can see we've got all these lines. We're going to do every other line. So it doesn't matter where you start, just pick one. And I'm going to get this nice and saturated with paint. I'm going to put it down and swipe outward. Then I'm going to leave a space and I'm going to do the same thing all the way around. And then of course I've got one that's abnormally larger than the other, so I'm going to fix that because it's driving me nuts. Seems like that's going to be my thing tonight. I'm going to have one that drives me crazy every time. And I wouldn't worry about them being completely perfect because we're going to add swipes going inwards as well, and that's going to help balance it out. But if there's any that are drastically shorter than the others, you might want to just use your mechanical pencil tip and pull out the line a little bit. I'm pretty happy with mine. I think they're fine. They don't have to be perfect. On this sample here, these are not all perfectly the same size, and once you put the other direction on there, it's not quite as noticeable. So once we have that center there, I'm going to use the same tool, and I'm going to switch colors to the Aqua, and I'm going to come to the outside edge and I'm going to pull a swipe inward on every other line. All right, on the next step, what we're going to do is this lacy pattern that kind of loops around here. And I'm going to start with the loops instead of the inside dots because I think it's a little more tedious, and so I want to get it out of the way. But also once those dots are there, I don't want to smudge those. So I'm going to get my blue stylus, which seems to have disappeared. Uh-oh. Was hiding. I forgot to take it out. There we go. All right, the blue stylus on the small end. And we're using the teal paint. And for this, I'm not really going to count the dots. There's a lot of back and forth in this one, and nobody's going to count them. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go around each loop, and I'm going to add my starter dot on the inside. And so one here, I'm going to do that all the way around. so that visually I can see where I'm going. And then it's a lot of back and forth. You have to dip in between each dot, and I'm just going to follow this line up and around, trying to keep the dots similarly spaced. And this is a lot of dots because each one of these loops gets dotted all the way around. Now when I start my next loop, I've already got the 2 inner dots there, so I can start just a little farther upward. About halfway through, I understand if you start cursing me. No judgment.
But it'll look so good later.
I do really like this. Even
Yeah.
it's kind of tedious. I think it turns out pretty. It's kind of lacy. I know this is probably going to take us all different amounts of time to finish, so I'm just going to pause for a second and give us a few minutes to get on the same page. All right, the next step is the clear rod, the 4 millimeters, and the peach pearl paint, and 1 dot goes in each of these sections.
I totally did that backwards.
What do you mean? What did you do?
I did the peach first and then the lace around it.
That's okay. There's no rules.
I was just so wanting to catch up.
You're fine. If you're caught up, you're fast.
It
actually is written that way. Like I would have done when I did my original. I did the dots first, but I was a little scared to smudge those. All right, next we're going to switch to the 6 millimeter purple tool, and I'm going to use the Aqua paint. And then just outside these loops, we have little circles. That's where we're going to put that dot right in the center. Make sure you give yourself enough room that you're not going to cover up all that lacy design we just did. And then we're going to go all the way around with that. These are actually all swipes too. So I'm going to do a couple at a time and just get one of your small tools. I'm going to use the blue with the small end. And once you get that circle in the middle, I can do 2 or 3 at a time. Just pull it out into a little pin. And that pin should stop right where that line starts. And that'll prevent the paint from drying by keeping that as a complete separate step. For the next step, we're going to use the clear 4 millimeter tool. And there are 2 more parts, 2 more petals that go around this pin here. So in this smaller area, I'm going to put a dot right at the tip of the pin. There will be another dot in another step. So we're not putting the dot on the dot. We're putting the dot in between the dot and the pin, right in the center. So I'm using the 4 millimeter tool and the gold paint. And this one butts right up next to that pin. Now, sometimes when you're working on a piece that's engraved, what can happen is the engrave marks will stop the dot and not make it look like a complete dot. So sometimes I like to go back around and just make them a little fuller. So I can just lightly tap some more paint right on top, and sometimes that'll fix that. If that doesn't work, you can always use your little tool and just kind of get across that line slightly. Sometimes it's not an issue, but if it's really noticeable, you might want to fix it. And then I'm going to get my green tool, the large end, and for this, it is the light blue paint. And on each side, I'm going to add a light blue swoosh down each side. So I'm going to come right up next to that gold dot and just swoosh downward on each side. And again, these lines can be great for helping you keep everything even, and it makes it a lot easier to complete these designs. But if you need to go back and adjust with a small point, don't be afraid to do that. I can already see there's a few that I'm going to need to fix. Then for the next step, we're going to add another petal. And for this one, we're going to have a 3mm peach dot in the center, and then we're going to switch to the 2mm side and walk the dots down each side. So I'm going to do all my 3mm centers first. That's the green stylus tool with the large end. And that center dot goes right where there's a center dot carved in there. And I'm using the aqua color down each side, so I'm going to dip the small end, and then I'm going to come off the edge of that peach dot. And however many you can fit. So I can fit 6, so I'm going to count 6 on each arm. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And just repeat that all the way around. Now, sometimes this happens when I repeat a design, and that's why I say it's okay that they're all a little different. I'm working a little tighter today, and so I have a little extra room. So I've got plenty of space at the end of this petal where this peach is before the petal ends. So I'm going to put another dot there. This is not on the, on the original design, but I don't want to leave it empty. So I'm going to go ahead and get my 4mm tool and just plop a dot right there. Just plop one right in there. You do not have to do that if you don't have space. But anytime we're working together, don't be afraid to go rogue and fill in spaces if you end up with some, because sometimes it happens. Or sometimes you might have to leave an element out if you work a little wider. Just go with it. Nobody knows it's not supposed to be there. All right, we're kind of in the home stretch here. For the next step, I'm going to take my eraser and we're going to make some ovals. And so I'm going to use the dark teal, and we have one in that little dip in between each petal. So I'm going to do all that, or do those all the way around. And then we have one at the end of each petal. So I'm going to start with the inside ones. And this is with the teal paint. Make sure there's plenty of paint each and every time so that you can cover up any of those engraving marks that you need to. So those are all my inside ovals. And then at the end of each petal, there's going to be another oval. And so that would go right at the end. For the next step, we're going to add these swooshes on each side of the tip of the petal. The inside swoosh is aqua, the outside swoosh is light blue, and I use my 3mm tool. Use your best judgment as far as your spacing goes. You can always switch to the smaller side if you need to, but I'm going to start with the aqua paint. And I'm going to pull my aqua swooshes down each side. So whenever I do swooshes like this, I do like to stop and see if any are noticeable. Every once in a while, it feels like one stop's a little short. And so don't be afraid to go back there and lengthen it if you need to. Sometimes when you make it, it feels like it's drastically shorter, but when you're finished, it's not as obvious. But don't be afraid to adjust those if you need to. And after I do all those aqua swipes, I'm going to come back through and I'm going to do the light blue. So again, look at your spacing. You can use the 3mm end or the 2.5mm end. And I'm going to come right off this oval, right next to the aqua with the light blue. Right, next step, I'm going to use my 4mm tool, the clear rod, and I'm going to use the peach paint. And for this, we're going to make these little outside elements. And so I want one dot. And what I'm going to do is we've got the edge of this petal. I'm going to kind of visually put this dot kind of right at the edge of the petal. You can go all the way to the edge of your piece if you want to, but you'll lose the one at the bottom, which is also fine if you need that guideline. But either use the edge of your piece or the end of these petals to put your peach dot. And then next to each peach dot, I've got little gold micro dots, and I use the purple stylus on the, or purple, this is blue stylus, large end, and I add one on the inside and then one on the left and one on the right. And so these are equal sizes. So I dip and dot each time, and I add 3 around each dot. So I'm going to do the one facing inward first, all the way around. And then once you have those all the way around, I add one on the left and one on the right. And that's the end of the pattern on the step-by-step guide. The last thing to do is top dots, and y'all know I like you to decide where to put your own top dots. What I chose to do was wherever I had a peach dot, I put a gold dot inside. And then the other place I did top dots was on the pin. I added some top dots in there with a lighter and then a darker color. So top dots are totally up to you. I'm going to spend a few minutes here and just add a few top dots. Remember, in order to top dot, you do need your paint to be fairly dry. Here in the middle, I'm definitely dry. Around the ends, maybe not so much, but going to use your best judgment there. All right, I'm going to end the video here. I hope that if you finish your piece, you'll share in the group. I can't wait to see it.